Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. We are continuing our discussion on this system of Vaishnava philosophy called the teachings of Nimbarka Acharya. Now, there is an important point of difference to be noted between Advaita on the one hand and many of these later Vaishnava schools, post-Ramanuja Vaishnava schools like Madhva, Nimbarka, Vallabha, Chaitanya and others. And that point of difference is that unlike Advaitins, these Vaishnava schools, they depend a lot on mythological books, Puranic literature, different semi-mythological theological works. For example, Vishnu Purana, Bhagavata and so on. So, frequently a problem arises, especially in the field of hermeneutics, where the tools used by Shankaracharya or the tools used by the students of Advaita Vedanta in interpreting Shankaracharya's views are frequently different from the tools used by scholars who study these Vaishnava systems. A lot depends upon certain strong beliefs which are part of folklore and local traditions, belief systems, which may not be found all over this country, all over India, but in some places. So I shall come to that. And then we should discuss on some of the most philosophically most important aspects of the hermeneutical tools to be used, to be understood when we understand the higher philosophy of Nimbarka. So to reiterate what I said earlier, Nimbarka system is one of the Vaishnava schools, later Vaishnava schools. After Shankaracharya, Ramanuja and Madhvacharya followed. Though Nimbarka belongs to a period between these two, still frequently Nimbarka school is considered to be one of the later Vaishnava schools, clubbed along with Vallabhacharya, Chaitanya and others, because there are many common teachings which are common to both Vallabha, Nimbarka and Chaitanya. To give an example, Nimbarka believed in a feminine deity, Radha Rani Radha. Now, the early Vaishnava philosophers who had a more philosophical approach towards Vaishnavism, they did not think of a need to bring in a feminine consort of Krishna like Radha. So, which you find that this feminine archetypal ideal in Vaishnavism you find in Chaitanya school also. So it's called that's why it's frequently called a sampradaya. Sampradaya means a denomination, a group frequently associated with a community, which is supposed to follow certain rituals, even certain marks, the way you have to put your sandal paste mark on your forehead. You can see that there are different formations, different marks made with sandal paste. And there are differences between Madhva system, Ramanuja system, Nimbarka and also Chaitanya. Now in Shankaracharya's Advaita system, you don't find any of this. So if you want to know the answer, why a man like Schopenhauer fell in love with Vedanta when he read Upanishads, it's because Advaita philosophy doesn't ask you to announce your faith on your forehead. That's a very important point, remember. And that's also the reason why Vivekananda emphasized on Advaita when he preached and taught in Western world. But then, in contrast to this, there is this concept of sampradaya. Sampradaya in a denomination. It may not have much to do with higher philosophy. But if you follow that ideal, or if you belong to that tradition, that hierarchy, then you are supposed to do certain things every day. You should have the sandal-paste mark in a specific manner on your forehead. Even to the point of, in fact, that specific mark should also be there on the forehead of an elephant. So you find in some parts of South India, two different contrasting schools of sandal-paste mark. Belonging to Ramanuja system, Vengadai, Valagalai, you find. I'm not so familiar because that's different from the place I'm coming from. So there's the great conflict and fight to assert the supremacy of one style of putting sandal-paste mark on your forehead. Not only on the forehead of human being, we want the elephant, for example. Elephants are used for procession in temple festivals, you find. So I'm coming to that. So it's called a sampradaya. Sampradaya is more like, I would say, it's something like the Catholic Church, so to speak. You're asked to take for granted certain belief systems without asking any question. And you are asked to consider that's the only way to belong to that tradition. Now, these are certain special aspects of the Vaishnavite schools of philosophy. So, in this aspect, for example, if you read the traditional writings on Nimbarka Acharya, you find, for example, Nimbarka himself is a continuation of a lofty lineage, beginning with God himself, with Sanaga, Sanat Kumara, Sanatana, etc. And of course coming up to Nimbarka. And again in between the great Vedic sage Narada is brought in, and Narada is introduced as somebody who revived this Vaishnava system. And again Nimbarka brought in this worship of Radha Krishna, and also focusing on one specific region because of his historical association with Lord Krishna, and considering that place as a special place where God is always present. So this localization of the divine, it is totally absent in Advaita Vedanta. If you remember one important quotation, I'm not quoting the exact words, you find in the San Francisco Vedanta Society's website. We used to have it. Swami Vivekananda is talking about if you sit in the middle of the Market Street. So Market Street in 1900, maybe not as crowded as today, but it was sufficiently crowded with all horse carriages moving around. Swami Vivekananda says, standing right in the middle of Market Street, if you can keep your mind calm and quiet and focused on the divine, that is the real sign of spiritual experience. Now you can say, I don't think Ramanujacharya, Madhva, Nimbarka would have said that. Nimbarka would say that if you live in Vrindavan, you can have a divine presence of God. It is absolutely right, nothing wrong in it, but Advaita goes beyond that. Advaita does not reject this view. Advaita includes within itself both Nimbarka, Vallabha, Chaitanya, Ramanuja, Madhva, and anybody else for that matter. But Advaita emphasizes the point that the highest spiritual realization is when you're able to see the presence of the divine everywhere, in everything, and in everyone. So this is an important point. Another important point, in modern times there are many controversies. Many of the modern scholars try or they enjoy fighting with the traditional scholars, not often with much success, of course. According to some of the traditional modern scholars, the only authentic work written by Nimbarka was this Vedanta, Parijata, Saurabha. But as I mentioned earlier, there are quite a few other books which also can be considered to be authentic. Prapanna Kalpavalli, then Mantra Rahasya Shodashi, and there are Dashasloki, it is called Vedanta Kamadhenu, or called Siddhartha, the well-known book which contains only just 10 verses, which includes the essence of Nimbarka's philosophy. Now, it's called Dashasloki or Siddhanta Ratna, it is called. Now, as I mentioned, Nimbarka called his system as Swabhavika Bheda to distinguish that from his predecessor, who also had a very similar system of philosophy. His name is Bhaskaracharya, who is Bheda. Now, one important point to remember about Nimbarka is he almost copied some of the teachings of Ramanujacharya, especially Ramanuja's concept of prapatti, sharanagati, or complete self-surrender. So, whether Prapatti Chintamani or Prapanna Kalpavalli, if you find, or elsewhere, whenever he deals with devotion, Nimbarka practically repeats what Ramanuja already taught. This has raised some controversies among scholars that Nimbarka lived before Ramanuja and he was influenced by Nimbarka, and also the other way around, that Nimbarka lived after Ramanuja, who was highly influenced by Ramanuja's philosophy. Again, it's almost similar, almost identical. Anugulyasya sankalpaka pradigulyasya varjanam rakshasya vishwasa goptuktavarnadha atma nikshepakarpanne shadvidha sharanagati, which I explained in great detail when we are discussing Ramanuja's philosophy. It's a distinct philosophical system where bhakti, or the highest devotion, is defined as one's complete self-surrender to God, God's will, and then establishing a relationship with God. Either you can look upon God as your friend, he may be your master, or maybe your benefactor, or maybe your Ishtadevata deity, whatever may be, you can look upon God as somebody who is very close to you, establishing an intimate relationship, very similar to human relationships with God. This is an important contribution of Nimbarka. He emphasized this point. Now, of course, though there are similarities among Ramanuja's and Nimbarka philosophers, Nimbarka's followers, there are also differences. For example, I mentioned earlier, Ramanuja does not talk about Radha, but Nimbarka's system includes, as is one of the most important doctrines, this concept of the divine archetype, divine consort of Krishna, and who is this Radha is attended by thousands of gopis in Vrindavan. You can find his influence directly on Chaitanya's school. There is one difference is that Nimbarka did not believe in collective processions and chanting the mantra, Maha Mantra, which is a distinct contribution of Chaitanya system. Ramanuja, as we mentioned, also taught a system of philosophy which had elements of difference and also non-difference. That's called Chit Achit Visishta Advaita. It is Advaita, but conditioned by or modified by Chit Achit, the supreme reality, Brahman, which manifests, which evolves, which manifests as this world and also different living beings living in this world. But in Ramanuja system, the difference is subordinate to non-difference. The importance is given to Advaita element, but Advaita is conditioned by this by the inclusion of Jiva, living beings, and Jagat, within that Advaitic Brahman. But the primary importance is given to the non-difference aspect. So it's called Amsha Amshi. Everything in this world is part, and Brahman or God is the whole. That's the Ramanuja system. But Nimbarka, on the other hand, he gives equal importance to both Bheda and Abheda, difference and also non-difference. He says difference is true, non-difference also is true. But in Ramanuja system, both are true, but non-difference is supreme. On the other hand, Madhvacharya says non-difference is totally absent. It totally negates and rejects non-difference. Everything in this world and everyone in this world is different from everyone else, everything else, and also from God. Panchabheda Siddhanta, which we discussed very, very elaborately in the earlier sessions. If you have got any doubt, you can ask for clarification during interaction. So, when we try to understand the metaphysical structure of Advaita and other systems of philosophy, it's always better to keep in mind this concept of difference and non-difference. Ramanuja accepts difference and also non-difference. It is called Visishtaikyam. There is Advaita, but it is Visishta. Chit Achit Visishta Advaita. Madhvacharya, just the opposite of Advaita. He says the difference is eternal, permanent, and there cannot be any kind of non-difference. There cannot be any kind of identity. Madhvacharya. Nimbarka comes here and says that both are equally true. So, this is one important point, remember. Now, we will come to that later. There is this concept of Parinamavada in Indian philosophical systems, not only among Vedantis but also among non-Vedantis. Nimbarka believe that Brahman is real, different jivas are real, and also all the living objects are real. Chit, Achit, and also Brahman, all are equally real. And he said that all these different objects are evolutes of Brahman. They evolve from Brahman. It's called Parinama. When you talk about evolution, you're talking about real change, complete change. For example, the oil that comes out of seed, totally different. But a golden necklace that comes out of gold, well, obviously when you melt this necklace, it goes back to gold. So, also we talk about there's a pot made of clay, you break it, it goes back to clay. That's totally different from oil that comes out of, that evolves out of seed. Now this is, here we have to discuss this important philosophical doctrine, philosophical aspect of Indian philosophy, Indian thought systems. It is called Karya Karana Bandha, means the relationship or the absence of it between cause and effect. This is a very, very important point to remember when we study Indian philosophical systems. So I shall today I shall devote some time to make a detailed exposition of some of the important principles, important approaches in this Karya Karana Bandha Vada. I mean, it's called Satkarya Vada, Asatkarya Vada, etc. I shall try to explain this. It can be a formal description because in the coming days when we discuss Buddhism, Vasautrantika, Vaibhashika, Vijnanavada, Shunyavada, and also other schools of Vedanta like Vallabha and Chaitanya school, etc. It's very important to keep in mind. So, the most articulate statement related to Karya Karana Bandhavadas means approaches of philosophical doctrines with regard to the relationship between cause and effect. Cause, effect. Now, this has a lot to do with what we call creationism and evolutionism, if you draw a parallel from Catholic or maybe Christian theology. It's very important. Creationism and also evolutionism. Apparently very, very, very different. So, I'm just trying to draw some parallelisms from between Hindu Vedantic philosophical systems and also Western, predominantly Christian philosophical systems. So the most important statement comes in one well-known book that belongs to Advaita tradition called Samkshipta Shariraka or Samkshepa Shariraka, written by a very great Vedantic scholar who was a close follower of Shankaracharya. His name was Sarvajñatma Muni. So the name of the book is Samkshepa Shariraka and the author is Sarvajñatma Muni. In that book, in a single verse, in 2 lines, he gives a marvelous summary of different approaches of some of the most important approaches in Indian philosophical systems. The verse is Arambhavada Kanabhaksha Pakshaha Sanghadavadastu Bhadanta Pakshaha Sankhyaadi Paksha Parinamavadu Vedanta Pakshastu Vivartavada. Very, very simple, but very, very important for every serious student of Indian philosophy to understand the traditional approach. So what this tells you is, there is one approach. It is called Arambhavada. Arambhavada means Asatkaryavada. What it actually means is the idea that every effect is a new product. Every karya is something that comes into existence when it is produced. It is called Asatkaryavada. And this view was held mostly by the Naiyayika school of Gautama and the Vaisheshika school of Kanada. What it is called Utpattivada. What it means is, for example, normally we know, suppose you want to weave a cloth from threads, let's say, or you want to make a pot from a clay. Now, suppose and now here the thread is the upadana karana, material cause. It's called the samavai karana, sometimes called. That means the effect, the cloth is inherent in the threads. It is already there in the threads. That is the Advaitin's view, that is the opposite view. Normally, everyone knows that if you take away all the threads from a cloth, there will be no clothes left. If you remove all the clay from a clay pot, there will be no pot left. So, that clay or the thread is the upadana karana, samavai karana, you may call it, material cause. Now, Naiyayikas and Vaisheshikas will tell you, it is not so. The cloth is totally different from the threads. Why? Because you don't wear threads. And again, the threads are so many in number. There are so many different threads. Maybe a cloth may contain tens of thousands of threads. So how can you say that the cloth is inherent in threads? Again, a pile of clay you won't use for drinking water. It should become a pot. So there is Buddhi Veda. And also there is also the Vyavahara Veda, Sankhya Veda. All these differences they quote. So you don't know how many grains of clay is there in the clay, but pot is only just one. So it is totally wrong to say that the thread inheres, or maybe it is inherent in the thread. The cloth is not inherent. The cloth is an entirely new product. Second point is, suppose, now remember, to understand this logic, let us see the opposite logic. Against this, the opposite school is called Satkaryavada, according to which the effect is inherent in the cause. The cloth is inherent in the thread. So they will ask you, well, if the cloth is a totally new product, then you don't need threads to, you don't go for threads. If you say the pot is totally different from clay, then why should you seek clay for making a pot? You can make some other material you can use. That is the view of the Satkaryavadins. Satkaryavada means the view that every effect is only a manifestation of the cause because the effect is inherent in the cause. That is Satkaryavada. Asatkaryavada means the opposite of this. Every effect is something new, which has absolutely no connection with the cause. So there are different views in this matter. So the Satkaryavadins have got one important statement. They says, Asat akaranat upadana grahanat sarva sambhava abhava shaktasya shakya karanat karana bhava cha satkaryam. So shaktasya shakya karanat karana bhava cha satkaryam. Means, if the effect was absent in the cause, as the Asatkaryavadins, that is Naiyayikas and Vaisheshikas say, that every effect is something new. If that were true, then why should you go in search of threads to weave a cloth? You could have used a piece of mud to get a cloth. You don't do that. The cloth is inherent only in the thread. That's why you use thread for making a cloth. Now, if you come to the Nimbarka and Ramanuja, they will tell you, of course, there are differences and also the slight differences there. But the point is, they will tell you that God has become the world because they are Satkaryavadins. Parinama, school of Satkaryavada. So, Satkaryavada has got two mainstreams, Parinamavada and Vivartavada. Both belong to Satkaryavada. And Satkaryavada means the view that the effect is pre-existent in the cause. The effect is pre-existing in the cause. That's why you believe that cloth is there in the thread. That's why you use threads for making a cloth. You believe that pot is pre-existing in the clay. That's why you go in search of clay to make a pot. Now, against this, the opposite school will tell you, well, if the effect is pre-existing in cause, then why should you bring in this efficient cause? Why should you bring a pot maker to make a pot? Because the pot is already there in the clay. So there are arguments for and against. A pot maker has to come and turn this clay into a pot. So not only that, something can come into existence only when it is absent before it comes into existence. It's a very interesting thing. You cannot say something has come into existence which was already existing. If it was already existing, then why should you work for making a pot? If pot is already there, then there is no need to. There is no need for a pot maker to work hard with this machine to make a pot out of clay. So they have their own argument, abhavadeva bhavotpattihi. And they use a double negative, na anupamruddhya pradubhavat. Without destroying the previous entity, you cannot get an effect. Without destroying the cause or without completely changing the cause, without bringing complete transformation, without destroying the cause, you cannot have any effect. If there is clay in the clay pot, you won't use it for the purpose you have to store water. So all the clay should go away. The only clay pot comes into existence. This is the view of the Utpattivadins, Naiyayikas, Vaisheshikas, called Asakaryavadins. So now the question arises, how do you relate this to God and this world? Now, in this case, you can say, of course, if you read the Genesis, I don't want to go into that because maybe out of question, but if you read the Genesis, you find justification for both these views. Because God created this world. If He creates this world, mean the world did not exist before He created it. In His absence, there can be this world. Again, but then God breathed His soul into the nostrils of man, The famous painting, where the old man representing God who stretches out his finger, transmitting the soul. So that means there is a connection between the cause and effect. The effect cannot be totally unrelated to the cause. So I'm not going to that. This is a different subject. So the point is, according to Ramanuja, Madhva, Nimbarka and others, the cause and effect are very important and their understanding. Now, according to the popular view, Arambhavada is Asatkaryavada. The view, that's the first one that we refer to, Arambhavada, Kanabhaksha. Arambhavada means Utpattivada, the idea that every effect is a new creation, totally unrelated to its cause. Because if it existed earlier, then there is no need to produce it. But according to the opposite school, Satkaryavadins, they believe that if it did not exist earlier, then you cannot produce it. What I mean is, the possibility of a pot pre-exists in the clay. The potential for a cloth pre-exists in the thread. That's why you use threads to produce cloth. Sanghadavadastu bhadanta paksha. Sanghadavada is used by Buddhists. So, Arambhavada is the view of Naiyayikas and Vaisheshikas. Sanghadavada is the view of Buddhists. Because they believe that in reality nothing exists. But somehow these threads come together and they become this cloth. But that also is essentially impermanent. In contrast to this, there is the view of Nimbarka, Ramanuja and Sankhyas, who believe in Parinamavada, or the school of real transformation, real change. According to Sankhya school, the world is nothing but Prakriti Parinama. According to them, there are two fundamental categories. One is Purusha, the effulgent one, and Prakriti, the non-effulgent. The entire world, our senses, our mind, our intellect, sense objects, all these are 23 evolutes, are different transformations of the same Prakriti. It's called Prakriti Parinamavada. Ramanuja and Nimbarka and Madhva, and also in Chaitanya school, they believe in this Brahma Parinamavada. Brahma here means Ishvara, their idea of God. The God, out of Him, creates His world. So He is a creator, but it is also the source of this evolution. The entire world, everything is evolutes. There are also minor differences which I don't want to we'll discuss when we discuss by the Chaitanya school. So, according to Sankhya, they believe Prakriti Parinama. According to Nimbarka, they believed in the Parinama of Brahman. Brahman, according to Nimbarka, Ramanuja, for them, Brahman corresponds to the highest reality, who is a anthropomorphic, all-knowing, omniscient, creator God. Advaitins, on the other hand, they believe in a kind of Satkaryavada. They believe in Vivarta. Vivarta here means transformation, but it is not real transformation, it is only apparent transformation. They believe that this world is in a way Brahma Vivarta. So this term is used in Advaita discussions. This world is nothing but it comes from Brahman. But in that case, you may imagine the Brahman is the source of this world. True, but then this creation itself is actually not real. Just like you mistake a rope for a snake, you can say the snake idea, the wrong notion of snake will not occur in our mind if there was no rope. True. But the rope actually has not become the snake. We think before we bring light, we somehow imagine there is a snake, and the snake idea itself is actually it's dependent upon the rope that is lying there. And also there is another approach in Advaita, that is, it is avidya vivarta. Because of avidya only, we believe this Brahman has become this world. So these are different views of Nimbarka, Vallabha, Chaitanya, Shankara, Ramanuja and Madhva. I mean, I'm going to explain again once more. First of all, the connection, the relationship or the absence of relationship between God and human beings and this world is explained like this. Is Karya Karana Sambandha Vada. Means, Vada here means school of thought or maybe an approach, a philosophical approach to this phenomenon. How do we explain this? We can say that the world is nothing but an evolute of God. It coming out of God, that's one way. And then if it is really, it's a real change, real evolution, like oil seed becoming oil, then it is called parinama. If it is apparent change, for example, like the rope appears to have become the snake, it is vivarta. So, according to the school, that is Asatkaryavada, who believe that this change brings about an entirely new entity. I mean, the effect has absolutely no relationship at all with the cause. The cause is called Upadana Karana or Samavayi Karana. For example, the clay in the context of pot, gold in the context of a necklace, or thread in the context of a cloth. Now, according to these Asatkaryavadins who believe that every effect is a new entity, a new creation, they believe that there are fundamental differences between the cause and effect. So, effect is totally unrelated. And they give this example. One is Buddhi Veda. You certainly don't mistake a pot for clay. Then Akriti Bheda. The pot is totally different from clay. Clay lies there in a heap, but a pot has a distinct shape, a name and everything. Shabda Bheda. Use different names. You don't use the word pot to mean a pile of clay. Again, Sankhya Bheda. the clay may contain innumerable grains, particles of clay, but the pot is just one. Again, Karya Bheda, because from if you compare the two, they look totally different. So in this way, they see different different reasons for asserting their view that every effect is a new creation. And as I mentioned earlier, the view that every effect is a new creation is called Asatkaryavada. Literally it means the karya, the effect, is not pre-existing in karana, in the cause. That is asatkarya. The opposite is satkarya. I mean the effect is pre-existing in the cause. So the view of Utpattivada or the view Asatkaryavada, mean every effect is new creation. That view is held by Naiyayikas and Vaisheshikas. It's called Utpattivada sometimes, and have their own ideas. And based on this, they form their philosophic systems. So when we go through different schools of Vedanta, we'll find that Ramanuja, Madhva, Nimbarka, Vallabha and Chaitanya, more or less, they believe in one specific school of Satkaryavada called Parinamavada, Brahma Parinamavada. Advaitins believe in the Vivarta school of Satkaryavada, same main school, we just got two divisions, Satkaryavada and Asatkaryavada. In total contrast to this, Naiyayikas and Vaisheshikas, they believe that every effect is a new creation. It has absolutely no connection, no relationship with the cause. This idea behind. And now we can have interaction. I wanted to introduce this because it is difficult to explain, to introduce these in every single context, because when we talk about the idea of God in Nimbarka, Vallabha and others, with the world and different living beings, this should be kept in mind. Advaitins believe in Vivarta, in apparent change that is not real. Like, for example, they think that, really speaking, the cloth is nothing but threads. It has taken a different form, different shape. But you remove all the thread from a cloth, there is no cloth. What does it mean? It is thread only. It has got a distinct form. So it has got a different name. A golden necklace is nothing but gold with a specific form and specific name. So it's called Nama and Rupa. Name and form are superimposed upon the material cause, and you get the effect. In reality, the effect already pre-existed in the cause. If the potentiality of a golden necklace did not exist in gold, or the potentiality of a cloth did not exist in the thread, then you can take a heap of clay and make a cloth. You don't do that. You need threads only to produce cloth. If you want golden necklace, then you don't use clay. You use only gold, because the golden necklace is pre-existing in gold. If it's totally new entity, then you can make anything out of anything. So you can see the logic of Satkaryavada. I think modern science, because I'm not a scientist myself, but I think best of my understanding, modern science more or less supports the view of Satkaryavada. Means without the effect pre-existing in cause, that effect cannot manifest. That's an important thing. So, okay, so thank you. Now we will come to the interaction. You can ask us. I don't want to take a new subject after this. We can focus on this. A bit subtle, but it's worth knowing. There are also other views called Khyadivadas are there. Different views with regard to what is right knowledge, what is wrong knowledge. That's also a very huge subject. Atma Khyadi, Rasa Khyadi, Akhyadi, like that. So different, which we'll discuss later. You are most welcome with questions. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Vaishnavism does the Guruvayur temple subscribe to some?
Guruvayur temple technically, for those who don't not familiar, so it is one of the most important Vishnu Krishna temples in India, very ancient. They claim it goes back to 3000 years, to 1000 years BC. So anyway, whatever it is. So the point is, they do not belong to any of these distinct schools, really speaking. So you can find a synthesis of Nimbarka, Vallabha, but one thing, there is no Radha present there. So, this idea of Radha Rani as a consort of Krishna playing in Vrindavan, you don't find that outside of Chaitanya and Nimbarka schools. This is an important point, remember. So you can imagine many of these new ideas cropped up in different places in India as a reaction to Advaita. But philosophically, logically, you find Ramanuja system seems to be the most acceptable from a purely logical perspective. Because other schools, they found a need, they felt a need to bring up a feminine concert. There's absolutely nothing wrong in it. In India, anything is possible because human speculation is so inexhaustible, imponderable. Whatever it is, in Guruvayur you don't find anything that connects it with Nimbarka system, okay, or even Chaitanya system. But at the same time, I should remember the mantra used, that is very commonly used. In fact, the Maha Mantra used by Chaitanya school of devotees, frequently chanted by devotees in Guruvayur, very common. That's part of the rituals every day. But the concept of feminine concept of Krishna, Radha coming, you don't find so much. Okay, thank you.
At the beginning of my Vedanta studies, I was directed to Swami Tattwamayananda's works on epistemology and Vedanta. And struck me, I'm going to mute whoever that is coming from. Okay. What struck me was that the Advaita Vedanta's search for the transcendental divine was a leap beyond looking for the divine manifestation in this physical world. And it makes a lot of sense. Where do we find this divine source? Is it, and then do we find it here? Do we find it inherent in the material? Do we sense that it's feminine as well? Do we infer that it's this or that? And it does seem that without making the leap towards the idealistic philosophies, that the search would be inevitable.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
The land is what I'm saying. So the consequence of that, as I see it, are all these, as you put it, the artistic representation. You didn't really get into it, but the
sound is slightly disturbed. Sound. Can you repeat?
I'll stop then. That's happened before. I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah. Please continue. Please continue, Bobby. Please.
I was just going to conclude by saying that it makes sense that artists, in trying to depict divine presence, would have anthropomorphic representations.
Yeah. Are perfectly acceptable in Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. Absolutely. Totally. But Advaita also tells you to go, there's a way to go beyond even that. So I mentioned earlier, some of the most beautiful, the most unforgettable devotional poetical classics in Sanskrit language, written by Shankaracharya, dedicated to the divine feminine archetype. Saundarya Lahari, Ananda Lahari, even what we played yesterday, one of Shankaracharya's Kalyana Vrishti. Yesterday we played we played in our temple, absolutely marvelous. Now, so if you ask the question, who wrote the most wonderful divine devotional poet in Sanskrit language, addressed the feminine archetype. It is Shankaracharya only. So you find in all these poetic works, you find a devotee is looking at the Divine Mother, praying to Divine Mother, asking for blessings, for material fulfillment, also spiritual enlightenment. And then finally, it concludes with, "Oh Mother, please manifest within me as my essence, as my soul." So you begin with Dvaita, praying, and then finally you end up with Advaita. Now that is something which only Shankaracharya can claim. So the point is, if we go to Nimbarka, why it's very important, remember, Nimbarka was a wonderful devotee of God, great sage and saint. I'm only comparing, So Nimbarka, for example, imagining that Lord Krishna is still present in Vrindavan, he's playing with his, Krishna was a little child, small little child, playing with his friends, small little children like himself, like cowherds. You find this depicted in Bhagavata Purana this way. Now, in Bhagavata Purana itself talks about Lord Krishna as the transcendental, supreme divine reality, divine principle. Yanda pravisha mama vacham imam, you are present in my own heart and revitalizes my energy, my mind, my senses, all that. You find a prayer. So, Bhagavata Purana itself contains this highly Advaitic interpretation of the anthropomorphic. But Nimbarka stops with anthropomorphic. Means his transcendental is only an anthropomorphic and also present in a specific place where he is present is something. So to give an example, Jesus Christ is still living in Palestine or in Jerusalem. Think of that, you can imagine. Now remember, the place has its holiness, sanctity. Lord Krishna lived in Vrindavan, Christ lived in Jerusalem. There is a sanctity and sacredness, absolutely no doubt. But Nimbarka's system, again, it became a denomination with all this paraphernalia of belief systems and doctrines and rituals and things like that. Again, it's not a limitation. Absolutely, it's certainly great. There is a great spiritual meaning to it. What I meant to say was Advaita even goes beyond that. That's the only thing. Advaita doesn't reject this, but it transcends all this. So that's why, to understand different systems of philosophy, you have to keep Advaita background. That's why we discussed, we gave almost 47 sessions on Advaita. Then Ramanuja, Madhya, etc. So we can see. So the point is, Shankaracharya wrote the most marvelous devotional poem on Nimbarka's Krishna. Remember, Nimbarka was a great devotee of Krishna, but Shankaracharya wrote such marvelous poetical works on Nimbarka's Krishna. Remember. So just imagine that Ramanuja was a great devotee of God, but the same Shankaracharya wrote wonderful devotional poems on the same deity. So that is the universality of Advaita. All this accommodated, accepted and respected, and still going beyond all this. Unless you go beyond all this, you cannot accept all of them. If you accept one of them, then you have to reject everything else. But if you go beyond all this, then you can accept all of them. That's the point.
Yes, my Lord. I think I understand the consequences of that, is what you just said. I find, before moving on, I'll just say what I said last week. My reaction is that it's incredibly generous and inclusive as a philosophical approach.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Namaskar, Maharaj.
Namaste.
Thank you for the wonderful Durga Puja yesterday.
Yeah, thank you.
My question, so all these schools have different views on causation, Satkaryavada, Vivartavada. Do these schools also have a different view on Anumana, inference? And I ask because, so there's this philosopher David Hume, British philosopher David Hume, and he had these critiques about causation and also about inference. He's like, if you watch things, you can never really know cause and effect, and so you can never really infer anything. So I'm wondering if these ideas on the different causation is also related to Anumana, or if Anumana is a little bit different.
Yeah, you know, in Indian epistemology, if we stretch it to the farthest level, there are 10 different approaches in Indian epistemology. Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upamana, Shabda, Arthavati, Anupalabdhi, Sambhava, Aitihya, Cheshta, Parisesha, what is left over? 10. Of these, 6 of them are considered to be authentic. And the most commonly accepted approaches are direct perception, the pratyaksha, anumana, inference, comparison, then verbal testimony, presumption, and negation. 6. Of these, you are coming to your own view. You know, anumana is built upon pratyaksha. I mean, inference has no existence without a direct background of a direct perception. Your inference is based upon what you are already experienced. There cannot be any kind of inference in a vacuum. So, if you see the classical example that is in Aristotle, so, see, for you are seeing you are seeing smoke coming from the top of a mountain. You inferred the possibility of fire being there. That's because you are seeing association of smoke and fire in your kitchen, in a forest somewhere else, or sometime in the past. You may have read about it. So direct perception, according to the advanced Nayayikas, Pratyaksha Pramana, direct perception goes beyond sensory perception. When you read from a book and then when you analyze a reality in your own life, it is as good as pratyaksha. So inference is built upon pratyaksha. I think the problem with epistemology in Western tradition is they condensed everything into direct perception and inference. So this is an important point to remember. Remember, the moment you bring verbal testimony, they'll brand you as you're a theologian. Strictly speaking, if a man like Bertrand Russell did not acknowledge that Meister Eckhart was a philosopher, the greatest name in Christian philosophical tradition, I mean, next only to Augustine and Aquinas, maybe. Now remember, so in Western tradition, it doesn't what you call philosophy proper. They use the word. In philosophy proper, you don't go beyond direct perception and inference. But in Indian tradition, on the one hand, there is a stretching up to 10, or at least 10, at least 6 are accepted to be very important, not by all. Buddha, the Buddhists accept only 2. They accept only direct perception and inference. The Indian materialists accept only 1, direct perception, Charvakas. So the mainstream Buddha philosophers, they don't believe in revealed scriptures in Vedas. So they don't believe in verbal testimony. They believe only in direct perception and inference. And the Mimamsakas, the Prabhakaras believe only in 5. They leave out negation. Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upana, Sabda, Arthavarti. That's only two. So, among Indian philosophers, all of them don't accept the same number of tools of knowledge. To compare Western interpretations of inference, they'll be a bit problematic, because first of all you have to come to a common agreement as to what you mean by inference. A lot of what you call presumption, arthabhati in Indian logic will be included in inference in Western culture. Arthabhati means suppose you are growing fatter and fatter every day, and you say you are not eating food during daytime. So through inference in Western tradition, somebody else infer that you are eating at night. That's a point. This is called arthabhati in Indian tradition, but actually part of inference in Western tradition. So you can imagine that. So all these problems are there, strictly speaking. Okay.
Mike, I had a couple thoughts, a couple questions. One is, we usually hear the example of the snake and the rope that you brought up today.
Yeah.
As somebody sees a rope but mistakes it for a snake. But it seems to me, and somebody was mentioning that one Shankara actually said it's their opposite, that the world, we see it as a rope when it's actually a snake. So we go after our desires thinking they're ropes, but they're actually a venomous, poisonous, terrible snake. So that seems like, flipping the example seems more appropriate to what Shankar was saying. As we mistake the world, we see it as harmless like a rope, but it's actually a venomous snake. Is that
Yeah. That is mentioned in the context. If you think all the worldly enjoyments, what the world offers to you, sensory objects, enjoyments, all those things, if you take them to be the supreme goal of human life, then it is Vishayam Vishavatyacha. So Vishaya means all the objects of enjoyment. Vishavat means like poison, give up. In the Vivekachudamani says. So leave this world, give up this world, renounce this world, thinking that it is poison. Their context is totally different. It is not a philosophical context. The context is from the standpoint of a spiritual seeker who is entrapped, who is deluded into thinking that life is meant for enjoyment. The goal of human life is to enjoy this world, all these worldly things, whatever the senses can offer. That is the only goal of human existence. To such a person, Shankaracharya says, this world is poison. But then, from a philosophical point of view, coming back to the old example, the analogy. So, really speaking, here, when you correct your first impression, the first impression was that it's a snake. When you bring light, you understand it's not a snake but a rope. Actually, what you mistook to be the snake is now recognized to be what it is, a rope. So, at the philosophical level, when a spiritual seeker is practicing spiritual disciplines, he should first of all convince himself what this world offers, this transient, this momentary enjoyments, all the temptations, all they constitute a huge toxic poison. So that should be your approach. This is used as a tool that will help us to practice detachment from worldly enjoyments. Higher wisdom, this idea behind. So that's the context. The other context is, at the highest level, there is nothing to give up. There is nothing for you to detach from. Because what you see this world is non-different from Brahman. What you mistook to be the snake is actually non-different from rope. The rope you mistook to be the snake. But actually, there's no real snake. So they say the rope, if nothing but nothing but reality. In that rope, instead of seeing rope, you saw the snake. That wrong notion is gone, and the rope remains. The snake did not come and disappear. It is in your mind only. So, when you reach that level of spiritual enlightenment, when you look upon everything in this world as non-different from the supreme reality, then there is no need for you to look upon this world as poison. That's only as a spiritual discipline. For example, a child should be taught to keep away from drugs and alcohol. But a child becomes a sage or saint or an Einstein, you don't have to teach him that. So, as a spiritual discipline, you have to look upon this world as something that is problematic. Not because the world is problematic, but because obsessive attachment to worldly things can be problematic. The world is the same everywhere. The same world in which we are living, the same world in which Shankaracharya also lived. The world has not undergone any change from ancient time. Whether Socrates' time, Jesus Christ, the Buddha, the same world in which we are living. The same world Sri Ramakrishna was living, but was thinking of God all the time. And then same world in which we are, all people are living. So, for a spiritual seeker, it is necessary to understand the problems of this world, means problems of obsessive attachment to the world. For an enlightened person, there is no need. That's why Brahma Satyam, Jagat Satyam, the spiritual experience for an enlightened person. I quoted Vivekananda, standing in Market Street of San Francisco, if you can think of Brahman, the supreme divine reality everywhere, then there is no need for you to go to Himalayas. People go to Himalayas because they want to leave something behind, going to search for something better, something inferior, superior, good or bad, that is transcended when you can see the same Brahman manifesting in Market Street, to borrow Swami Vivekananda's expression. That's it. Okay.
Thank you, Swami. So in that example, then the rope represents Brahman. So we see a snake, but actually it's a rope. And in Shankara's example, the rope represents Brahman.
Yeah, in this context, yeah. Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So my question is about this Vivartavada.
Yeah.
I know that's not Nimbarka's belief, but Vivartavada, about the changes in the world being not real in an absolute sense.
Yeah.
So does this make Pratyaksha or Anumana a challenge? Like, can we fully trust Pratyaksha or Anumana if the changes themselves are illusory?
Yeah. This Vivarta, Parina, all this has got two dimensions. One is philosophically you can read, study from a teacher, read and convince yourself. But according to Advaita, you understand this world. This world is only Vivarta, only at the experience level. In Vedanta, epistemology and metaphysics, logic, all these are only tools for our own intellectual conviction. Intellectual conviction is only necessary to remove wrong intellectual convictions. You read Vedanta books, not because Vedanta books will take you to spiritual enlightenment, but Vedanta book, reading Vedanta, listening to Vedanta will remove many of the wrong intellectual notions we have got in our mind. The correct intellectual notions, the correct intellectual understanding will remove wrong intellectual understanding. And that will remove the obstacle. And then what happens, then only we will start really contemplating, convincing ourselves, and we'll get to the experience level of correct intellectual convictions. This is an important point. Surprisingly, in Vedanta, one important principle is books will not take you to God. Put in simple, everyday, every man's language, common man's language. Books cannot take you to God. But books can help you to take a right turn in your journey. Because in our mind there are so many ideas which are not very helpful, which create a lot of confusion. Now, if one can take a very strong, very intimate, intellectual interest in Vedanta, you find that it helps our mind or intellect or your physical life actually. Lot of rubbish, lot of confusions are just removed. It doesn't mean that you become a Paramahamsa or Srirama or Shankaracharya on the spot. What happens is, it helps you to begin your spiritual journey. That's an important point. That's why I think one major difference between Advaita and all other non-Advaitic systems is, Advaita alone tells you books are important, reading is important, prayer is very important, but the ultimate goal is to experience. All these disciplines are necessary to remove obstacles. And when obstacles are removed, when everything on your way is removed, you reach the goal. That's an important point. See Shankara's logic. Dr. Radhakrishnan writes long passages. The Shankara's relentless logic, courage, bravery in logic. He says, this man who wrote all the most wonderful devotional poetry, prostrating before gods and goddesses and prayer and meditation, all the puja, everything he wrote, and he installed temples. And he started monasteries where he established rules and regulations how to perform this puja. Finally he says, you know what happens is, all these are secondary. So Dr. Radhakrishnan, in his Indian Philosophy, Volume 2, maybe referring to this, is the boldness. It's almost like, can you imagine Augustine Aquinas telling you reading Bible is not enough? I don't think Augustine Aquinas will survive for long if he did that. At least, Meister Eckhart did not survive. Can you imagine the same Shankaracharya who wrote all the commentaries, Prakarana Granthas, great classical books, great, and he was the one who wrote this long poem which includes 64 types of worship, Chadusashti Upajara Puja Stotram. And then, yesterday we played one of his great devotional poems here, and you can find 250 people just sat spellbound. Many of them didn't understand the meaning of it. That's the magic of Shankaracharya devotional poetry. And the same man says, all this not enough. So, you have to reach that experience, that the boldness, the courage of logic. That's what makes him so unique. Okay, thank you for the question.
Well, Mundaka, this is Mundaka Upanishad, right? Says this exactly what you said. Like, it's even, the Upanishad itself says, this is lower knowledge. So that's, I don't think you see that really anywhere else, right? No. That's sort of...
in all Upanishads you find this. In all Upanishads you find this. But outside of Upanishads you don't find this. Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samveda, Atharvaveda, all these are the secondary. Experience alone is the supreme. So, that's why I'm asking the question. Can anyone say, or can you imagine Augustine or Aquinas saying that you have to go beyond Bible to be a true Christian, to have Christian experience? Christian experience is very much a subject in the discussions, I think, in the City of God, Augustine's City of God, that higher. And also you find in St. Teresa of Avila's autobiography, Christian experience. So, but can anyone say it's not enough to read Bible to have Christian experience, So that's the boldness of Shankara in his books. Okay, thank you for the question. Yeah. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.